Good afternoon. Welcome to yet another episode in this series on resilience. Today I'm going to talk about dealing with change. It was normally not the topic of today, but because I was in an organization this week where there had been some change and it was causing quite some stress, I decided to swap two episodes. Maybe it can help somebody. So, change. Nobody really likes change that much, and change can create a lot of stress. Now, what do you think is more stressful? Choosing to change yourself or being imposed upon? Most people will think that when a change has been imposed upon you, it's harder to deal with it. Not always. If everything goes well, you choosing to change is perfect. However, if things do not turn out the way you thought they would, the fact that you chose to change can actually be quite stressful because you have nobody to be upset with. And then that boss, for instance, who imposed something on you, is a very good excuse to be angry, to be upset, to feel the victim. So it's not always easier to deal with change when you choose it yourself. It depends on the outcome. Okay, so I said already it can be a bit stressful. And for your own resilience, it's better to deal with it in a good way. Now, a resilient person, whenever confronted with change, is not necessarily going to bounce back immediately. He or she will also have to deal with it. However, usually they will deal with it quicker, more efficiently. And I'm going to give you some tools to do so too. The model I'm using comes from Elisabeth Kübler-Ross, who was a psychiatrist and a specialist in dealing with palliative patients. So people who are going to die. So she was dealing with them and with their family members who were about to lose somebody. And in her work, she noticed that those people went to similar sets of emotions from the moment they heard they were going to die until they actually did die. What were these emotions? First, shock, denial, anger, bargaining, sadness, and or depression, acceptance. Let me explain this with a fictitious example, touch wood, hopefully. So suppose I go to my doctor because I had ordered some blood tests for my allergies and I'm going back for the results. And when I come in, she says, "Hi Nancy," but I can see from her face that something's wrong. And actually, it is. And she says, "I'm afraid you have 3 more months to live." Touch wood. Now, probably my doctor wouldn't say it in this way, but suppose this is the message. Yeah. First emotion, shock. I really hadn't seen this coming. This is really, no, this is not possible. After the shock, the denial. This is not possible. This must be a mistake in the lab. Maybe they switched the sample with somebody else's. I'm really active in the field of resilience. I walk my own talk. I take good care of myself. So this is really not possible. Possibly also it should have happened to John because John smokes. He doesn't sleep. He drinks. He doesn't take care of himself. However, I do, so it really isn't fair. No, this is already the anger, I'm sorry. I'm jumping one phase. So denial can't be possible. Anger, what I just said, it's not fair. But also often the anger is addressed to the messenger. So in this case, the doctor, like, really, I can't believe how incompetent you are. And how can you do this to people? And blah, 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 blah. So really angry. After the anger comes the bargaining. And then maybe, so despite my upbringing in the boarding school with the nuns, I kind of drifted a little bit away from the church, and all of a sudden I say, okay, fine, I'm going to walk to Santiago de Compostela and then I'm going to get better. Or I'm going to give so much X amount of money to a good cause and then I'll get better. Or if I'm not going to do this anymore, so I'll get better, and so on. So this is bargaining. If the bargaining doesn't work, then we get into sadness/depression. So I start to wonder what's going to happen to me. This is so sad. And what's going to happen to the people I leave behind, my children, my partner, my family, my friends. Sadness. And then, hi. Silvia, ciao. And then after the sadness comes acceptance. So this is the full cycle from Elisabeth Kübler-Ross. So first you go down. When you're in sadness, you're really at the bottom. And then actually the only way is up and you go up again. Now what did Elisabeth Kübler-Ross notice? She noticed that if you get to the end, you're going to die in a more serene way than if you don't. Also, if I'm going to die in a more serene way, probably it's going to be easier on those people that I leave behind. This is a bit the message. Now, obviously, we're not here to talk about death, but this is where the first scheme comes from. One more thing, though. Not everybody gets to the end for two reasons. First of all, maybe it's too quick. A person dies suddenly, so people don't have the time to go through the full cycle, the grief cycle. Or there is time, but a person gets stuck in one of the emotions, gets stuck in the anger or the sadness, and because of this they can't move on. Enough about death. At some point they thought, interesting theory. Maybe this is also applicable to any big change people go through. And actually it is. So coming back to the reorganization in the organization where I was before, earlier this week. So my team is going to be split in two. First, shock. What? Where is this coming from? Denial. They can't do this. We were functioning well. We need all these people to work on this project. This must be a mistake. This can't be true. Anger. But these people at the top, this hierarchy, they don't know what they're doing. Is this HR? Is this how you take care of your staff? This is really incredible. I'll have to go to the unions. We have to fight this, and so on and so forth. After this, the bargaining. Maybe I can go to the unions and they can solve it. Or I can come up with a very detailed action plan why it is so important that we stay together, because if not, the work is not going to be done efficiently. And if I go to the hierarchy with a plan that this is really not going to work, this is really against all sense, good sense, common sense, they're going to have to change their mind. This is the bargaining. Suppose the bargaining doesn't work. Sadness. What am I going to do without my colleagues? I've known them for so long. We know each other. We work well together. This is not possible. I won't be able to come to work. I won't like to come to work anymore. Sadness. And then finally, ideally, we go to acceptance. Ideally joy, but probably acceptance is all we can go for. Okay? Now, probably you're going to say, yeah, this is easier said than done. And yes, it is. However, I'm going to give you a tool to make it a bit easier. So, this reorganization. Take a piece of paper and write down something on the paper. So there's going to be 3 columns. You can also write it underneath each other, whatever. First question to answer. What's going through your head linked to this change? So all of your internal dialogue, all the thoughts that cross your mind. This is not possible. This is not efficient. I won't be able to come to work anymore. I'm going to be so stressed. Even if it's like 20, 30, 40 thoughts, write them all down. Just brain dump. Afterwards, I'll tell you what to do with it. Second step, focus on what remains the same. So, reorganization, half of my team goes, the other half stays. So that remains the same. I'm still going to work in the same organization. I'm still going to do the job that I'm good at. So a couple of things remain the same. I'll tell you why that's important later. Third step, what could be possible benefits of this change? And maybe this is the hardest, especially when the change has just been announced, because we're too much in denial and anger, but there could be possible benefits. Maybe I didn't get along with one of the colleagues that's going, so maybe I'm going to get some new colleagues that turn out to be actually very nice. Maybe I'm going to learn a new skill, and I like to learn new things. So there could also be positive benefits. Now, why are these 3 steps important? First, the brain dump, the internal dialogue, to really acknowledge what you're thinking, and that's fine. So acknowledgement is important here. But then you can also apply cognitive restructuring to it. You can go through each and every single statement and check, is this true? Is this really the case? Can I look at it in a more helpful way? Can I turn a possible limiting belief into a more empowering belief? And there is a whole session on this in the series a couple of weeks ago. Cognitive restructuring. Look it up if you haven't seen it. Secondly, what remains the same? When we're going through a change, we sometimes feel totally overwhelmed by everything that's changing, that we can't see what remains the same anymore. And while I don't want to ignore that there is a change, it is good to acknowledge that some things do stay the same. This will create some balance, and it will kind of stop the tsunami of changes. So very important. Thirdly, possible benefits. I think that's obvious. It is how can I look at this positively again and not just through my negative glasses. I admit the last step is probably the most difficult. However, I've heard some horror stories, like real horror stories. Like once I did the exercise in a group where somebody had actually their child kidnapped. So, I mean, how hard can it be? Like, this is like really awful. And even that person could come up with a benefit. Luckily, everything ended well, so maybe it wouldn't have been the case if things had turned out badly, but they did turn out well. Well, his benefit was having to go through this made us really realize who our friends were and that we are really supported. We have a great network. I might not have known this if it hadn't happened. So even in extreme situations, it can be helpful. This being said, what you still need to do when going through a change, because it is stressful, we will acknowledge that, keep on taking good care of your buffer. Look at the previous episodes. Do some relaxation every once in a while to stay in your green zone and not always in your red zone. And you'll be all right. Okay? And what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So you can deal with change. And the better you do this, the more efficiently you do this, the more resilient you'll become in the future. Good luck with it. Have a great weekend and see you next week. Ciao, ciao, Silvia. Ciao.